You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Can you hear me over there? We're back now. We're back. And I was going to
say, loud and clear.
Good.
I hear you loud and clear. You're crisp. You're clean. You sound fit. It's August 2nd, folks. We're already in August, man. The year is flying by. It's August 2nd, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, and you're listening to episode 604.
Yeah, it is 604. Damn, I faded out a little too quick there.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have our usual pre-podcast breakdown meeting where we outline in very detailed format the agenda for today. So a little bit lost, but yeah, 604. Hope you're all having a awesome start to the week. Had some a couple exciting races going on this past weekend, and then you got the inaugural Ironman Alaska coming up this weekend, along with Boulder 70.3. So looking forward to hearing how that goes. I know it's going to be cold. It's got to be. It's Alaska, but I'm definitely interested in hearing about the experience that race is. Like we had an athlete, maybe three years ago. Name was Eric. He did Alaska Man, and they made you
take bear spray.
Carry, bear spray. Made you carry bear spray. And I think it was like somewhere along the bike, he and like a couple of the guys had to stop because there was a bear in the road, and they just like stopped and then wait. And I'm like, that is so. And the water was like low 50s, and it was like one of those like extreme triathlons. So like the run was like you got to have a pace partner after a certain point on the run because it was so rocky and it was starting to get dark. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear how the race goes itself and how beautiful the backdrop is. But as I was kind of commenting on an athlete's who's racing it this weekend, talking about the last race that he did was Coeur d'Alene last year, I think. Last year. And it was insanely hot. And he was like, so I'm going for like polar extremes here. He lives in Ohio. He's like, going from Coeur d'Alene last year, which is unseasonably hot, and now to Alaska. And I just said, listen, and we went through this like with the last year that it was Ironman Louisville, is that you've got to stay warm. More people will drop out of a cold race due to the temp than drop out of the hot race due to the temp. And because once you get too cold, you're done. And so the biggest thing is, if you're racing this weekend, we'll finish our intro here in a second, but if you're racing that event, the water's going to be cold. It's probably going to be, I think, what I saw, rainy to start and chilly. Stay warm. Don't be like the guys and girls we saw coming out of T1 in Louisville a few years back when it was like low 40s and raining, and you saw them with like nothing but their tri-kit on, and they came right on back. Not by bike, but by van, because they got way too cold. So be warm. And take care of yourself. We're doing Alaska this weekend. If it's first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Your time is very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We'll cover it all. We will do swim, bike, run specific podcasts. We'll do a lot of race recaps and also some race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're both going through, both as individuals, but also coaches and athletes ourselves. We'll also talk about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I both work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level amateurs trying to do their very first sprint and or even 5K and just trying to find their way in the sport, all the way up through elite level athletes trying to get back to Kona and everywhere in between. Just a wide range, which is awesome. I think that's the way to coach, is because you're always learning, and you can learn something from every athlete that you work with, whether they are relatively fast in their terms or relatively slow in their terms. It's all relative. It's your journey, it's your experience, and we're just here to help you along the way. We'll also hop into our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Be part of the conversation in there. We'll do Q&As in there like we did this last week, and may finish up on those later this week. We only touched on like 4 or 5 last week, but great community, awesome people. Don't be a lurker, participate. I've seen a lot of participation in there recently. So yeah, get in there and learn something. Avoid some of the pitfalls we all have in a very confusing sport. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads. We do have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, I've been lurking in that Facebook group a little bit, but it's okay to lurk. But I had a question for you. We're both training.
Yeah, go for it.
We're both training, right? You're training.
Yeah, we're both training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Training.
So I have a question I want to ask. I know I brought up something in our pre-prod meeting, but I have a different question actually.
Put me on the spot. Go for it, man.
Well, how do we know? It's just an interesting question to me. Is how do we know when we're ready to race? And I just think that a lot of people, it's like we talk about really perfecting all this stuff and everything and going through training. And I'm kind of thinking about, like that's been my whole thought process right here is like, how do I know I'm ready 5 weeks ahead of time or something? Ready enough to sign up, right? That's still what I'm debating. I promise that decision's coming soon because this is really kind of the crux of why I'm bringing this up is that, at some point you just got to jump in the water, right? I mean, I've talked in the past about how you get to the race morning and everything and how not everybody, some people are nervous, some people are anxious, some people are this and that. And I've always described it as it just feels to me like walking the plank. So all my nerves go away. It's sort of like at some point you just got to make a decision to go. And, you can, prematurely optimize everything in your life, but some, you know what I mean? It's like, whether it's a presentation or anything, you have to just sometimes, just believe you're ready and go do it, But I think we get caught up in this, like, we have to do simulations all the time and do everything like that. And like, maybe do the full run and make sure or whatever the case may be. And, it's just that for me, it's an interesting question to think about because I think sometimes you get done with a great ride and you're like, I'm ready. And then you go out and run the next day and go, shit, I got a lot of work to do. So it can vary from day to day. And then how many times that kind of mindset changes maybe through your taper or whatever, the doubt comes in or all these kind of things. And I just wanted to kind of start there and see what you had to say about that.
No, it's an excellent question. And I think it can be answered in a bunch of different ways. When you ask someone, what does it feel like to be ready? I think you have to ask yourself, am I ready to, because listen, there's different stages of, quote unquote readiness, like, are you looking to have a breakthrough performance, right? And does the course suit that, expectation? Does the weather, the likelihood of good weather support that expectation? Again, which is, so many triathletes have just outrageous and irresponsible, non-objective driven expectations. They're just hopes and assumptions. So based on nothing, but I assume or I hope. And then when they don't get it, they're crushed. When the race didn't crush them, they crushed themselves long before they went into a race. So there's different levels of readiness. So like I'll use myself as an example here. I do have like certain not benchmarks, but I guess feelings. I've been doing this for a long time. So I know what it feels like, and I know the numbers that I see when I'm in, because again, like I said, okay, so I'm doing Madison 70.3 in September. It's not I wouldn't consider it a PR friendly course. And my last 5 70.3s have all been under 440, and then one just over 440 last year in Ohio. I know what it feels like to be in that shape. Mm-hmm. Right. So I know what I'm swimming at the moment. I know what I'm, the watts I'm putting out on the bike. I know where my run usually is. I know what it feels like to be in that ballpark. Right. So ready to maybe lay down a PR, right? I know what that feels like, but then you ask yourself, is the course you're doing, are you going to be ready for it on that course? Because the numbers would be different because it's a lot more difficult than the courses that yielded those 430s and low 440. And then you have, am I ready to, execute a good race, right? You check off those. Am I ready to do the race, right? Because it really all comes down like, what's your objective? To PR, to finish, to execute a race. And I always start at the front, right? Like Ohio last year, I really sucked when it came to like dedicating swim specific time before the race. So I knew that while I was in some decent bike shape and some pretty decent run shape, those two were going to be affected because I had been such a slack ass when it came to the swim, and I paid for it. So I knew that going in. I was also objective about it. Going into this race at Wisconsin, like, we went through. I put in a pretty good training block up until we moved, so into May, and then basically like all of June. In the first, week or two of July, I got in some training, but it wasn't super focused, and a lot of things were on the back burner just because moving's freaking hard and it takes you a while to get in a groove. Now, the last few weeks, I've started to kind of like put a few pieces together. Would I say I'm gonna come to the line in the best shape I've ever had? No, but that's not what I'm trying to get out of the event, right? Of the race, I'm trying to get back to training, to being focused, to staying motivated. And honestly, at this point, just going into the race, wanting to execute a good event based on the fitness that I have. And then frankly, I want to have a really good time doing it. Yeah, it's like, I think some of it's just from the location. Madison's a place that I love. We have a ton of athletes doing the 7.3 and the full. So you'd be a lot of, and I want to kind of get back to, enjoying myself and just kind of using this race to kind of catapult me into figuring some things out and being focused for, the next year and what I want to do next year. So am I ready in that aspect? Yes. But in order to feel ready and be ready, to me, it all starts from the chin up. Like you can be, an A+ trainer and then an F- racer. A lot of athletes are like that. They get in their head. They are great when training, and then a race day, they just fold like a raggedy piece of aluminum foil because they have what it takes to do anything they want to from the chin down. But when it comes to race day, which is the chin up, they don't have it. I mean, I think people generally forget that on race day, in order to win or in order to do your best, you only have to beat 70% of the people, because the other 30% will beat themselves. and that goes physically and mentally. And so I think when you talk about being ready, everyone wants to focus on numbers or metrics, and I think we even alluded to this when we talked about Ironman Texas this last year, or this last April. Is I had two athletes specifically that, due to travel and just life and being unmotivated and uncommitted, had no business finishing that race on that day with the wind and the heat. They had no business, but they finished because it's from the chin up. And so I think when you go through the checklist that are worrying about your swim pace, or I swam 1.2 miles or 2.4 in the pool straight, and so I got that time cut off, right? And then I got on the bike, and I've done a few centuries, and I've done 112, did some long breaks. I got that. I've ran a marathon, whatever. I got that. Do you? Like you're doing the distance on a single event, right? In a controlled environment with no pressure is a total. It's like comparing apples to broccoli. Okay, and even like apples and oranges, it's totally different. And so I think you have to ask yourself, am I ready, and what does being ready mean to me? And can I accept going into this race that, I'm either going to go for performance or I'm going to go for execution, and what am I really going for? So it takes an honest conversation. I could wake up tomorrow and do a 70.3. Sure, I know I could. I'm that prepared for it to finish, to do the distance. And hopefully in 5 weeks, I'm a little bit fitter than that right now, and I'm able to actually execute a decent race and have fun doing it. But I'm not probably going to get to the point in the next 5 or 6 weeks to where I'm feeling like I'm going to go out there and have a performance-ready event based on the work that I've done. So it really comes down to being objective, and then what does being ready mean to you?
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because it definitely matters that, you've done multiple 70.3s, so you have a different perspective on it. Obviously, I was kind of thinking, and also in terms of people that are, maybe doing their first one or their first full or whatever. How do you know you're ready? Because it's a very mysterious thing, and I remember it really like it was yesterday that I was like, oh man, well, I guess I'm just going to go do this. And trust in the training and all the accumulated fatigue that you built up, and believing in that, and when I did I still remember exactly when I knew I was ready. I was confident that I was going to be okay at Wisconsin, is when I did Muncie. And it wasn't even at the end. It was when I got done with the swim. It was a half, obviously. And when my hand hit the sand, I was like, you know what? that was the first time in my head that I was like, I got this now, because I understand what it's going to take to pace that race. And I love what you said there about, like, I'm going to execute based on your fitness, or do the best you can based on your fitness, because I think that's the tripping point a lot of times, is that people have, like you said, some of these tri-calc numbers in their head and individual events, and they're like, okay, the best I ever rode was 5 hours at this pace, and I know I can do that for 6. And the most I ever swam in, a pool, like these, like you said, the controlled environments, and then you try to put your best overall days together, and they might be 3 or 4 weeks apart or whatever, and they're not together and they're not stacked. And then we get out of our head about it. It's like we're projecting a different level of fitness than we actually really have to put 3 things together like that. So I think it's just, I think that's a really valid point to think about, is that we have to understand where we're at truly. And it's really interesting, because I know that I'm not as quote unquote speed fast as I used to be, maybe like 5 years ago. But, I ran Sunday, a long run, and I felt like a different kind of pace control and strength about my run. So I was like, okay, that's a good sign. I know I'm not top end speed. I haven't been working, I'm just older. I haven't been running nearly as much as I used to, probably. And I definitely haven't been doing a lot of speed work, but I've been doing a lot of hills and a lot of just tempo kind of stuff, and really getting a good feel for things. And it's kind of giving me a different perspective. And I think that's the mental stuff too. And, we talk about experience or whatever, but really understanding the pacing that you are capable of, and how, going from a successful 70.3, for example, into a full, how you have to understand what gearing it back means, to, what, I don't care what kind of shape you're in, you have to be able to adjust to that, whether it's mentally or, through your numbers or whatever you're going to do. But you really have to pay attention to that, and understanding if you're ready to go is a lot about that. And plus, it's like, how do we know if we're ever ready? Some days you just have to, jump in and figure it out on the fly too. It's, I don't care what it is, but it's just like, take a chance, go do it, and be smart. I mean, you always say that, but I think that is like always gets lost in Ironman racing for sure.
We've become so incredibly obsessed with having concrete, definitive answers, right? That that we can project or predict, or that's what I'm gonna get. And it what it does is it totally removes the opportunity to go into races like with very limited expectation, except to just do your best and then see what happens, right? It's like, if people just they want answers in order to be able to take the step to do it. Like, I want to know that I can finish before I go out there. No one can say that, right? You can watch like the best, if you like watching the PTO Canadian Open like 2 weeks ago, two distinct things that kind of come to mind as we have this conversation is, one, listen to Alistair Brantley talk before the race. He was like, yeah, I had to pull out of these races, and St. George, I was super fit. He's like, and I'm coming off an injury, but I'm here racing because I realized for the last year I missed out on so many opportunities to race when I could have raced, but I was holding back for this one specific one. And then, like St. George in May, he was super fit and then got sick like 2 days before. So he skipped all these races and all these opportunities to go out there, especially for a guy like him who's been there and done it and has got Olympic gold medals and some more championships than you can name. And to hear a guy that accomplished in that season and has been on the sport island, be like, yeah, I don't want to waste any more opportunities and just assume I get to race again. So he hopped into it. He ended up having stomach cramps and then kind of jogged his way to a finish line, but he finished. Then you have other athletes who, in the professional field, pulled out and had terrible days, right? And they're just done. You think they go in a race feeling like, I'm not doing this unless I know I can win, unless I know that I can do that. No, they get out there with the hope of just, hey, I just want to do my best and see what I have for the day. Nothing is guaranteed, right? But we've come to like need this, but I don't want to do it unless I know. Where's the fucking fun in that? Right? Like, you didn't sign up for your very first race knowing unequivocally that you could finish. You did it to push yourself. Pushing yourself and challenging yourself to do something new that's hard, that takes a lot of commitment. You do it because you're not sure, right? Because that's how we grow. We have to work hard. We have to be committed. We have to be motivated. We have to push ourselves in different ways. We can't take shortcuts, and it's going to take time. And yet there's still that, I'm not sure if I can do this, right? Physically, you shouldn't, but you should know mentally. But now so many people won't even toe the line. It's like, I just need to know. Guess what, guys? You can't know anything, right? There's we know less, I think, honestly, now as a society than we ever have ever. We can look things up, but we know less because we're so dependent on looking something up super quick to answer a question. Like, people are just totally, like, no one critical thinks anymore. No one goes with their gut. No one doesn't. It's like, oh, but I didn't really look this up quick. You don't know it. You just read it. And now you're regurgitating it, right? Same thing goes with social media. People, talk like they know everything about everything that's going on in the world today. You don't know, frankly, you don't know jack shit. You're just regurgitating what you read. That doesn't mean you know it. That just means you read it. And people do that so much now with racing. It's like, I want to know. I got to crunch numbers and I'm going to put it in best bikes. I'm going to do this and do that. I want to know. Like, so much of the greatness of endurance sports is finding something out within yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically. The best races that I know of athletes that they've ever had, they came as kind of a surprise. Hear me again. They came as a surprise. Things that they said at the end, I didn't know that I had that in me. Excuse me? Oh, you didn't know for a fact you could do that? No, I didn't. I just didn't think I had it in me. But you went out and you did it anyway. Like, that's why we got into endurance sports. That's why we're never satisfied. That's why we're continuing trying to push the envelope with what we're capable of and how fast we can go or how strong we can stay. That's the point, right? And if you've gotten to the point of sport to where you're afraid to race because you don't know what's going to happen, then you need to get back to basics. And you need to do something that's going to challenge yourself in different ways, because you've come way too complacent and way too, I don't want to say lazy, but it's kind of like the silver spoon mentality of triathlon. It's like, yeah, but I got to have it handed to me. I got to know I'm going to do it. And like, where's the fun in that? I think you should always honestly go into a race more confident from the chin up than you are from the chin down. Because usually if you're too overconfident from the chin down, it means you probably overtrained and you're just kind of banking on your fitness, kind of taking care of business. But then you're lacking upstairs because you didn't kind of mentally prepare for it. People do it all the time. They do it in training, they do it in racing. They just kind of think they can kind of do it because they've done it before. But what you want is an athlete totally tuned in, ready to go to bat, ready to go, be as resilient and work as hard and get it done as they possibly can. Not just looking for a way to not do it. Or, perfect example, had an athlete who lives in Minnesota. And let's be honest, most Minnesota athletes, are pretty freaking tough just because that's just what they do in Minneapolis. It's a Midwest thing, I guess. And he had a 70.3. His bike got stolen 2 nights before he raced out of his garage. Most triathletes would have the worst panic attack and basically call their season off. Their bike got stolen. He got his bike stolen, found a way to go to the bike shop the next day, got his bike, went to the race on Sunday. First ride ever on the bike was for 56 miles. Got turned around on cones because I think they were mismarks. He did extra miles and then came back and got done, crossed the finish line, PR by 5 minutes. And I was emailing him this morning. I said, man, I said, no matter what comes your way, because listen, like, there's that athlete and then there's the one that panics on race morning because they forgot their pump, even though there's 5,000 in transition. Like, that's the level of, like, oh my God, I forgot about what 85 PSI or 84.3. Like, what do I need to do? I'm not sure how's going to affect things. Then you got the guy whose bike gets stolen. I didn't even hear about it. He didn't even tell me. Just did it. Just went along. I was like, man, I just said, you're a tough fella. That's the kind of mentality you have to have. Instead of looking for reasons to not do something, find a reason to do it. Stop looking for excuses. Stop looking for things to worry about. Stop looking for the outliers that don't exist, because let's be honest, a lot of people are so comfortable now with uncertainty and anxiety and depression and feeling, uncertain. Like stability is almost more uncomfortable for some people than the comfort of what they're usually, accustomed to. Find a way to get it done and tell yourself, you know what, no matter what happens today, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it done. I don't know what the time will be, but I'm going to get it done. And if you have that mentality, then not only will you finish, but you'll probably surprise yourself. And then the most important thing that'll happen when you finish, you'll be proud of yourself, right? Because there's also, for those athletes there, then there's also the other side of athletes who get to the finish line and wonder, I had too much left. I played it too safe. Right? And you played too safe because you were worried about not having it. So you totally underperformed because you were so worried about making sure that you got it done. And so there's a lot of emotions, a lot of thought, and a lot of planning that go into these races, obviously a lot of training. But again, like you have to be ready from the chin up, in my opinion, a lot more than ready from the chin down. All these races are hard. Physically, your body is capable of so much more than you think it is. But mentally, that's where most people, in my experience, struggle the most, is what they're willing to do. And I just said yesterday, I said, you have no, excuse my language, I've already dropped an F-bomb or two here, but I said, you have no business fucking walking. No business. Zero business walking. I don't know why you do it. It's because you're scared of what might happen if you continue to run. And it's not an injury thing. It's just a thing. So comment this morning. 45-minute run. Great run. Didn't walk. Smiley face. Response. About fucking time. Right? Like that's, like, you need to push people to be able to do these things. And sometimes you just need someone else to tell you it's okay to do it, because telling ourselves to do it, we always kind of have that self-preservation, or, like kind of thing. Like we don't want to do too hard, because obviously we want to, treat ourselves well and do things safely. But sometimes you just need someone else to say, listen, you're totally fine. Get it done. So it's like positive peer pressure.
Yeah. And I know you've had these, pictures sent to you after a race of an athlete that maybe have had a crash on the bike, and their picture of them on the side of the road or whatever. And it's just always so damn, your heart just races or whatever. And I got one this weekend from a guy. It wasn't a bike accident per se, but he blew his tire and braked, and instead of flying over, he held back somehow, but his big ring gouged his whole calf up. It's like there was like 6 just indentation rips through with the big calf, and he sent it to me, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, well, because he's training for he was doing an Olympic. I think he's got a half and full or something ahead, and I go, bro, let me know, when you're ready to get back at it or how you're feeling. He goes, he said, just stay the course. And I was like, man, that's nice. I like that. And he goes, well, I played fullback and middle linebacker or outside linebacker in college, and this is like a rug burn on the scale of pain. That was great. But man, you said something, like you're saying a lot there that, I think, and I was talking to you a little bit about anxiety in the beginning and what anxiety is, and how I've been feeling a little. And I think sometimes when we're training hard, and I've talked about it in the past, but when I train Ironman, I called it breaking up the rocks inside a little bit. It kind of frees up your like reality, and it kind of takes away the numb in some ways. And then you start feeling shit all the time. And then you kind of like, it's tough to deal with. That's why people sit on the couch and eat Snicker bars and, drink Cokes and, get because I think it suppresses, a lot of these thoughts, or it numbs out the real shit you got to work on inside. And I think that's what happens when you train, is that it kind of brings that shit out again, right? Or meditation does the same thing for me. It's like I'll sit and feel great for a week or so, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're creating space for your problems that you've never solved or addressed in the past. And what I actually, in yesterday's athlete email I sent out, I pointed toward what I've really been trying to do lately is get into my confidence and find my confidence. And the way I've been doing it is by creating, because anxiety to me is like just fear of something that isn't even here yet. So you kind of like predetermine these negative outcomes. And I think the more that you sort of do that, I think the more you sort of get in the habit of doing it. And you kind of alluded to that. It's sort of like, you're always looking for that thing. You're always going that way. And to me, it's sort of about rewiring pathways upstairs. So if you're kind of working on ways to find your own confidence and build your own confidence and rewiring your brain to think that way, you're not as apt to sort of go down that negative road. And I think that's what I think about a lot when people think about, am I ready for the race? They're just always leaning the wrong way. It's like they're always thinking, well, what if I get a flat, or what if I can't swim, or if I get out of breath, instead of just thinking the other way. And what that does is it sort of takes away a constant nagging in your body. And it's just so really important to me to think about things like that, because when you start training, like I said, I feel like it just brings shit up, and we have to face it. And then it's like, okay, how do I kind of subdue this a little bit, or how do I deal with it? Maybe it is shit you haven't dealt with, and now all of a sudden, you have to deal with it. And hopefully you can get in a habit of, we have that shirt that we printed. I don't think it really sold a lot, but it was do it now. And sometimes I just put that thing on, and every time I walk by and I see a reflection, I'm like, all right, just do it. And you start doing that. And I know that's definitely a pattern that you always try to get into, is just get, do what's going on, get rid of it, instead of like dwelling on it and thinking about the worst possible outcomes, and just kind of sort of let go. It's like, I was also listening to my boy Alan Watts the other day, and I thought he had he's always got everything. 5 words he says are just magic. But he started his lecture out with a question. He said, how do I know what I really want? And he said, you don't know, because you already have it. It's just a matter of finding it. And I just thought that was so powerful, man, because it was all related to this sort of reaching out and trying to grab shit and do different things and figure out ways to control your life and like pull it all in and make it all organized and never have to worry about anything. And he said, once you can figure out how to give that up, that whole shit about reaching outside to satisfy what's already in you, that's when you connect with what he called divine energy, and you just have more energy to go. And I think a lot of us spend time with that. And that's the thing when we talk about social media. To me, it's always a trigger spot. And that's why I hate it so much, because it can be the simplest stuff, like, hey, reconnected with an old friend, haven't seen in 30 years. And I'm like, damn, I need to do that. And then had a friend that lost a good buddy of his, and then it kind of makes you nervous. You don't really know who they are. You know them through social media, but it's like now you feel like you have to send them a present and do all this shit, and it starts, running through your head. Is like, I need to do that. I need to do that. And I just think it's always a trigger spot for potential negative thought patterns, or that worry pattern, or I'm not good enough pattern. So that's why I think it's really, we talk about social media a lot and how it can be dangerous. And I think that to me is the way it is because it gets you thinking about stuff that you think you should be doing, but you really shouldn't necessarily, or you shouldn't at least feel bad about it. So it's always something that reminds you that you're not good enough, I think.
Yeah. I think obviously a lot of what we do and a lot of, the opportunities that we have to kind of, put ourselves at risk every day. People always think it's like, violent or riding your bike outside. No, you don't. You're putting yourself at risk every time you open up your damn phone and look on social media. That's just the truth, but we all do it, because so much of your life is in your phone, and everything else. But, I think, when it comes like the mentality and the anxiety of racing, we've always not joked, but, we can joke about me, but, when I always see someone posting like, unrelenting, like, positive quote messages and memes on Facebook, my first thought is always, oof, things are bad. Like things are struggling. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I was doing. But before I went to rehab, my life was an absolute like shit can. And all I would do was posting like, because I was like swinging the total opposite direction, totally overcompensating. And I think that's the same when it comes to, especially with athletes and triathletes specifically, there's a giant difference in confidence and bravado.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the best performing athletes I know have solid confidence, but they still have a very healthy margin of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. Humility.
Not because they haven't done it before, but because it's healthy to not be cocky and have like because when I see athletes that always post how excellent and how much they crush their workouts, my first thought is, you are still trying to convince yourself you're in shape. Like, because that's what it seems like to me, and that's honestly the truth for a lot of athletes. I think it's like what you're doing is you're trying to convince yourself. That's not how you convince yourself. You convince yourself by making small decisions each and every day that build your confidence through things that almost don't have anything to do with working out. Like the example, and this isn't like a huge like breakthrough or anything, but the pool in our neighborhood, you can lap swim in it now. There's been a lifeguard shortage all year or whatever. Some team is in it. But anyway, any day of the week I want to go, I can go up 0.6 miles to our pool and swim from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it doesn't work for everyone, but it works for me. So yesterday, I head on up there. I'm like, man, 0.6 miles. Like I set my alarm for 4:40, had a whole cup of coffee, grabbed my bag, was up at the pool, walking in at 5. And I walk up at 5. And there are 0 lights on in the pool. Zero lights in the pool. It's still, the sun doesn't come up now until first lights at like 5:55, sunup's on 6:15. There was a little glimmer of a light coming off the pool house. And I kind of looked at the pool and I was like, man, this is going to be like difficult to see in and do flip turns. I was like, F it. You can't pass this up. So I went down there, swam 3,000. And pitch black with a little bit of a glimmer from the light of the pool house, and got it done. And I was so pumped when I left, not because I like had some PR workout or distance or pace or whatever, but I got done. The sun was still coming up. I was like, I was happy because I did it, and B, I was like, all it took was just getting in the water to see if you could do it, like see if you could see just enough to get it done, instead of immediately looking at it like, oh, I guess the world's telling me not to swim this morning. Hashtag triathlete problems. Like, no, hashtag big fucking excuses. Like, but people do that, right? We always look for, if you're not in the mood, you're looking for excuses. You're not looking for wins. You're aiming for losses. Everyone does it. Everyone. You do it. I do it. We all do it. When we're in a bad mood, when we're lacking motivation, we don't have sleep, we haven't eaten enough. You're looking for excuses. You're aiming for losses. When you're in a solid mood, you got good sleep, your intention is there, you're not expecting some, grand performance, but you're like, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it done. And then what happens? You get it done. And those small, but might not feel like giant wins, right? What they do is they start, and you start to cultivate patterns of what comes and develops into resiliency. I'm going to find a way. And I'm going to get it done. Might not be pretty. I might not have an expectation attached to it. I might not know how it'll go. But getting it done is better than sitting on my rear end and not getting it done. Right? Because then what you do when you're sitting around is like, I needed a rest day anyway. You did an hour ago. You were feeling good. You're ready to go run. You're ready to go bike. Your smart trainer got messed up and locked into your gym. You're like, you know what? I was having a bad day. No, you weren't. You're having a great day until life decided to, toss a few lemons at you, and you'd want to make lemonade. You just wanted to, take lemon zest. I'm going to take it. I'm not doing rejection. I'm just going to take a little bit to the side and be done. You got to find a way. And that's how you develop confidence, because you have to have a healthy level of, I think I'm ready. But and those are my favorite phrases. I think I'm ready, but I'm going to get it done no matter what. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of mentality you want an athlete to have when they go into a race.
Yeah.
If you hear him say, dude, got it, gonna crush it, and you're like, you don't want to say tone it down a notch, because you don't want to be inconfident, but you want them to have like a healthy level of respect and uncertainty, because you never know what's going to happen. Nothing is guaranteed. You don't know how the race is going. And so if your only message to yourself is, I'm going to crush it, man. I got this. PRER, baby. Like, as soon as one bad thing happens, you're done. Because guess what? You're no longer hashtag crushing it. You're no longer, PRER. You're like, I got hit in the mouth and back to reality, but what do I have left? Nothing. I can't get to my phone. I can't, put on social media anything. So I guess here I am left with my own thoughts, trying to figure it out. And most people are utterly lost when it comes to that. Utterly lost. When it comes down to you, just you, having a conversation with yourself. Can't text your coach. Can't text your tribe buddies. Can't get on Strava. Can't get on Instagram. Can't TikTok your neighbor. Can't do anything. One conversation with yourself. How's it going to end? With you giving up? With you rationalizing excuse after excuse after excuse? Or with you telling yourself, hey, listen, dealt a bad hand, but, I can get it done, right? I can 100% get it done, because if playing with a bad hand meant you were going to lose every time, poker wouldn't exist. Okay, you can bluff your way. You can bluff your way through. You can make your way. And that's just people are not incapable, but we don't sit with our thoughts enough to know what it's like to have that conversation, right? Because we pick up our phone, or we have to have music, or we do our trainer rides and we have to watch Netflix, or we have to have Zwift, or we have to do Trainer Road, or we have to have a virtual course, or sometimes it's just good to just like not have distractions, because that's when you think. That's when you can have conversations with yourself. Because guess what? On race day, you don't get any of that, right? And that's why I think you've seen an increased DNF rate in athletes from 70.3 to fulls. Is that it's not because they don't have the ability or the opportunity to be physically ready. It's that they can't be mentally present when they race, and they don't know what it's like to have these conversations because they never had them with themselves. And then they get to race day and they wonder, I wonder why I'm not able to push you. Well, it's because you don't have this in front of you. Race day is race day, and it's totally different than training. And so you have to be ready to have those conversations and figure it out.
Yeah, I like what you said about small decisions that build confidence. In that pool example, swimming in the dark, that's like, that to me, those are your opportunities, man. Like I've did Saturday, a pretty long trainer ride for me, and you know how it goes. You get through the intervals, and then it's like, shit, I got like an hour to cool down right now. I'm good.
Longest minutes ever in the cool down. Longest
my God,
minutes on the world in the cool down.
I spent that whole hour. Like, let's just do 15 minutes, and then I'll be like, we talk about that. It's all right. Let's get to 20. And I did that. And to me, that's where it all happens, right? That's where that mental stuff happens. And that's where you build your race confidence and your toughness and things like that. Then the next day I went up to mountain bike up by the cottage. And I had taken my mountain bike in the week before. And it was the first time I rode it since it got tuned up. And it hadn't been tuned up in probably 5 years. It was okay, but I was like, I need it. I'm kind of getting into this. Let me tune it up and make it purr. I got out there, that chain was jumping every gear I was in, it was just jumping everywhere. And I'm like, this sucks, man. The only place I could keep it was in the big rings on both. And it was a cross chain situation. It was just a bad setup, but it was like rubbing. And I rode a couple loops, 20-mile loops, or 20-minute loops, I should say. And I got done. I'm like, this sucks. But I knew I wanted to ride it. So I got back on and I did it like right then, because it was just, there's nothing worse than mountain biking in one gear and, steep hills with the big rings and, but I figured it out and I got it done. I felt really good about it. And then I got done and I drove across the street to run that godforsaken Nordic trail thing. And it was, kept it in, they have loops, like 3-mile loops, and I'd refill and whatever. And then I go back out. And then the last one was just like this grinder, man. I picked the wrong loop to end with. And it was just all these like steep gravel hills. And I just got to a point where I'm, I can't run these anymore, but I'm going to get up and just keep recovering and keep getting back out there but it's like those little things, man, that are really starting to work, and it kind of, you always go through it once you find a groove. And like we talked about last week or something, I said, once I find a little bit of a groove on a trainer, that's when I start really dialing in, and it just sort of kind of spills into everything else. And it's just like, it's so, that's why I always say when people feel like they're behind on the bike, just start throwing in some longer trainer rides, because that will be so much more beneficial, I think, than just going out and doing lollygag rides, because you're always spinning, you never stop. It's a sucking grind. It's just all this and all that. And I just think mentally that's what happens, is you can really start being able to kind of get over humps. There's always little humps that we need to get over. And in a race, there's like 7,000 humps. So the more prepared you are for that, the better off you're going to be when your brain starts going haywire towards the end.
Because it is going to go haywire, and you're gonna think you're the world's fastest triathlete 1 minute, and then the world's worst the second minute, and that's just it. And you got to have you have to have an understanding of not listening to thoughts, just observing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a skill that's like a little Buddha
speaking like a true meditator.
Yeah, that's when you get started. But it's like you're not necessarily listening to it. You're just acknowledging that they're there, which is fine. Doesn't mean you have to act upon it, right? And be so impulsive and listen to your ego. That just means they're there. And sometimes, if they're big time alarms going off, they're very much telling you something, physically. But it's the mental ones that get people in a bad spot. And little pro tip. Pro tip for those of you that hate the cool down as much as this guy. If I even when I pre-build one of my own workouts, if I'm doing 90 minutes and the warm-up's 20, main set, and then the cool down's 15. Some days if I'm just totally dreading the cool down, because the interval is what you want to get to, right? Because they go by fast. You're putting out effort. You got some structure in there. You're getting the work done. Sometimes I'm you know what? I'm just gonna push the warm-up, right? I'm gonna make my appetizer bigger, leave the dessert a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna let my main course be the main course. I'm gonna extend my appetizer, which is the warm up, to 35 minutes. I'm right, 35-minute warm up, main set, 5-minute cool down. I'm in. because it allows me to I should probably cool down a little bit longer, but I'm I'll go walk the dog or something, and because it's those last 20 minutes you're all right, I've done the work. Yeah, right now I'm just kind of it takes 4. It's like watching paint dry or waiting for water to boil. The cool down minutes are the longest minutes in triathlon, kind of like the miles 20 through 20, kind of like miles 100 to 112 on the bike, or some of the longest miles. But yeah, it's a battle of thoughts, and you have to have had that conversation before, or similar conversations or practice to know how to resolve it on your own, without being told what to do, or it's hard. And I think, again, a lot of us struggle with it because we don't put ourselves in situations where you have to figure out, you have to make it work, and you have to make those tough decisions. We're too busy doing mindless things while our body is doing something very, very important, and you have to have that connection. But what we have now are just way too many opportunities to disconnect mentally, and then let the physical stuff happen. And then when on race day, they have to be synergistic, they be together, working in harmony, because one could feel terrible, right? But your mind has to make the decision, you know what, I'm making this happen. And if it doesn't know how to do that, then you're going to be lost. And we don't want you to be lost. We want you to be found. We want you to race well and race happy and not be anxious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, those cool downs or warm downs, those are interesting places, man. I think a lot can be discovered there, though, too, as you're spinning out for an hour.
It takes a lot of patience, right?
But I found, it takes a lot of patience, but you can kind of find something there. And then I noticed towards the end, I was it kind of came back, where I was maybe I was kind of up in the effort, or at least my cadence or something, but I started feeling oh, okay, now I'm kind of in a different groove. And then I got it down pretty easy after I got through that initial 20 minutes of shit, I got another hour here. Mm-hmm. And then once you get through it, and that's what I mean, though. It's because there's nothing more valuable than being able to get through those segments in a race and then kind of come out the other end. I mean, that's like our sport, you know. Don't believe
It
how
is
you
our
feel,
sport.
because it's going to change.
Yeah, it oddly enough, I think most people feel better at mile 1 of the run than they do mile 100 of the bike.
Yeah.
because you're because you're because you're like starting over again. And
Mm-hmm.
it is so mental. The sport is so mental, just from all the decisions you have to make, the choices that are there, the rabbit holes you can go down with negative thoughts, and it's so mental. And it's the piece that goes the most untrained, is people that they just don't take the time or don't recognize how important it is to train mentally, and making, like I said, small decisions create momentum, and you can create that positive momentum by making, small decisions that find a way. Um, but yeah, that's all I got today.
That's it, huh?
That's it, man.
You don't want to talk about deep breathing?
I was waiting. I feel like you've been jonesing over the report. Yes, I have mentioned this in my weekly email. I've been doing some meditation and breathing exercises the last 2.5 weeks. Mostly just to reduce stress and relax a little bit. I'm just generally always thinking and like trying to figure out something to do. And I'm definitely not super stressed, but listen, if I can make, time to, create a more well version of myself, then I feel like it's, you're supposed to do that, And so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna see what I can do. So yeah, I've been doing some meditation and breathing exercises before bed, and then doing a little like a breath hold, or quote unquote retention at the end of it. And I've always been kind of decent at holding my breath. Like, so you swim year round growing up, and like you can just do that. I think I've made it like a 75 before underwater, way back in the day. I think the first time I did it, it was like I did 215 or 220. And then I think I sent you a screenshot last night. I think I was up to I think I did like 345 last night. Just laying there, trying to relax, holding your breath. And it's 341. Super uncomfortable towards the end, but it's I found it very beneficial in a lot of ways. And there's some science to it as well, about the benefits that it could be having or can have on you. But it's been interesting to kind of sit that long and focus on not breathing, and then you feel different things in your body. But yeah, I find it helpful. And I think I texted you like 2 days before when I was over 3 minutes. I was like, I think I can get to 4 minutes. And let's see, last night I did like 341. I was like, all right, maybe 5, maybe 6. But why am I even putting a limit on it? Just continue to do the work. Who knows? Maybe I'll be the guy that can hold it for 10. You never know.
I said, right? Man, I think it's time for taper, dude. You're getting a little too over aggressive.
It's time for taper.
Well, we should explain though that that's not like, that's with your exhale, right? I mean, you're not.
No, this is with your inhale.
Oh, you're inhaling.
Yeah, this is you inhale and then hold.
Okay, because like my practice has always been deep inhales, exhale, normal, and then at the end just completely exhale, then hold your breath. Interesting.
You can do that too.
Try that. Yeah, because that's what I mean, isn't that how they teach you on that?
It's he said he breathes in and then it says breath hold, and I just do it when he tells me to do it.
Oh, okay. Just an exhale.
Just a farmer, man.
You do that. You exhale and then you hold, and then you take a deep in, and then you hold for a shorter period. But you're holding for a long period. So either way, but it is interesting to like kind of like get to a point with that breath hold where you're like, oh, I'm done, and then just like relaxing another layer, and then you're like, oh, I'm okay now. I'm actually okay.
That's been the hardest part, is like when I get like these signals, like my fingers, my toes start tingling, you can feel your heart, and instead of being like panic, I got to breathe and I got to do this, my next response is like, all right, what can I do to calm myself down to do it longer? Mm-hmm. And it's been interesting, like the things I've been able to like consciously do with my body to stave off, that feeling you have like gasping for air. I've got to breathe, because you're like, do you have to breathe right now? No, or your body would have already done it. right? Like, that's why, like, they don't want you to do it underwater, because your body will at some point just voluntarily take in her breath because it has to have oxygen. There's too much carbon dioxide, it has to have oxygen. So your body makes that decision for you, but it usually doesn't have the opportunity, hopefully not, whatever, but you make the decision for yourself that you've got to have it. And so it is an interesting, it's very, I think it really goes in line with, like, the attitude of when I need to stop and slow down, when I need to walk, when do I need to quit. I think it's actually very similar to the analogy we always give is, like, people are walking miles 20 to 24 and 25 out in the middle of nowhere. No one's around. They feel like trash. They're telling people, yeah, it's not my day. Get closer to the city. Closer to the cheers. Finish line. What are they doing? 3.7 second 40-yard dashes down the red carpet, right? Everybody can all of a sudden pull it out, the magic, and sprint for their last mile and make it happen. So it's not the body, it's the mind. And so it has been an interesting exercise in just, what is okay and kind of convincing yourself and your body that things are okay. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, it's fascinating. If you think about, like, those deep sea divers, that just,
I've always been fascinated by, like, the 11-minute free dive is just, like,
the free diving, man. But that, it's like, yeah, that's ridiculous, but it always makes me so curious about the potential that we have that we're not tapping. That's why I'm so fascinated by that stuff. It's just, I mean, what can we do if we just get out of our own way?
Yeah, and put down our phones.
What was the quote?
Right? Because, like I said,
let the body do what.
Yeah,
the body is
capable do what the body was meant to do. Yeah, or what's capable of doing. Like, it's, yeah, I mean, it's just we're barely going to use any of our brain, right? In fact, we're barely going to use any of our athletic potential. Fact. Wow. So basically, we're all underachievers. If you think about it, it's like discouraging and disappointing on one hand, but then it's like, well, maybe if I can start to do things that give me confidence to push my potential in ways that aren't directly involved in a sport that I'm, in with, then maybe those small, insignificant, expectation driven exercises or things I do that mentality will trickle over to the things that are important to me, and then start to kind of, like, grow roots in the rest of my life and figure out ways to get things done and not put limits on ourselves. So yeah, I think it's all very, very fascinating. But yeah, who knows what we're capable of? But we know this. We were capable of today. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for coaching assistance the rest of the year, you can always click on the coach tab and peruse our roster of coaches. And then if you need anything directly, you can reach out to Mike. He's at CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man. Deep breaths.
I do. I'll see you Thursday.
All right, bye.